Hi, I'm Alan, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Heptabase. Heptabase is a visual note-taking tool that helps you learn complex topics. I'm creating this new series of tutorials to teach you the fundamentals of how you can use Heptabase for your learning, for your research, and for your planning. But before we dive into the product details, I want to first share with you a little bit of the backstory of why we created this tool. So basically, since I was a child, one thing that I really love doing is to learn things that I'm curious about. And that's why I spend a lot of time reading books, watching online courses, reading articles, reading papers. But one thing that I struggled at the time, and one thing that I wish to have at the time, is that I wish to have a tool where I can easily extract all the knowledge and concept that I learned from all these different sources and put them together visually to see the structure of the topics that I care about. And that tool does not exist 10 years ago. It does not exist 5 years ago. And that's why we started building it 2 years ago. Our goal is to create a tool where everyone in the world can effectively establish a deep understanding of anything that they care about. And that's Heptabase. So in this video, I'm not going to talk about all the features that Heptabase have. Instead, I'm going to just focus on one important aspect of Heptabase, which is how you can use the whiteboard to make sense of a topic that you care about. And that's actually, a lot of people, they like to ask about like, I'm a new user of Heptabase. How do I get started? And the number one advice that I give them is to think about a topic that you care about and then create a whiteboard. For example, like this is an empty whiteboard. And as a startup founder, I really care about how to design the software for augmented learning. So this is the whiteboard that I created. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a walkthrough of some of the basic operation that you can do inside the whiteboard. And later on, I'm going to show you some like real world examples of how I use whiteboard to make sense of the things that I care about in the past. So inside the whiteboard, the most common action that you can do is you can double click the whiteboard to create a new card. Let's give this card a title, just call it a card. Every single card that you created on the whiteboard is like a note, like in traditional note-taking app. You can press Command Enter to expand it, and you can basically type any types of formats that you can think of. For example, if you are familiar with Markdown, you can create a bullet list, or you can like use tab to create another bullet and use tab to create another sub-bullet. And if you can also use some bracket to create some of a to-do list, another to-do item, and you can maybe use Markdown syntax to create a new heading. If you are not familiar with this kind of Markdown syntax, you can also use our / command and see all the options that you have. For example, like you might want to, if you are a software engineer, you might want to add a code block, and have some code here. And if you are, learning science or mathematics, and one thing that you might want to use is some of like inline math and type your equations here. And if you are doing some of the finance or like strategic planning work, then probably you might use create a table, and our table also support a lot of kind of like drag and drop capabilities. And so basically a card is a container of your notes where you can just type all these different types of format, and you can also give them some of the styling like bold and like italic, like strike through. And you can also mention some of the other cards that already exist, like this card, where I can press enter and see the content, or I can basically option click to open it on the right sidebar. So that is a card. So let's go back to this whiteboard. So the things that makes Heptabase different than other software is that all these cards that you create, they live in the central place called the card library. And so this is a card library. You can press Command 3 to open it, and you can see that the card you create here lives in the card library. So if you remove this card from the whiteboard by pressing backspace or delete, the card is still here, and you can still drag it back And if you want to delete this card completely from the card library, then you can click delete from, right click the card and click delete from card library, and that will completely remove the card. The reason that we design card library this way is because we believe that knowledge should be reusable across topics. For example, let's say you read this book about business 2 years ago, and since you really like the book, you create a whiteboard for it, and you put a lot of knowledge card of the book inside that whiteboard. And 2 years later, you start your own business and you are trying to think about your business strategy. So you create a new whiteboard called business strategy and start putting your ideas into it. And now you realize that, okay, 2 years ago I read this book and there are some useful knowledge that I might be able to apply in my current scenario. So you can just literally go to card library and filter the cards of that whiteboard and then drag this card back to this new whiteboard that you created, which means you can now synthesize the past knowledge you have learned with the new knowledge and the new thoughts that you have right now. So that's why we designed the card library this way, to make card reusable across many different whiteboards. But we also know that sometimes we might just want to create some text element on the whiteboard and we don't want it to go to the card library. And that we also support that. You can just press Command and double click and to create a text element. And we have similar text editing capability inside text element. Or you can right click and choose the text to create new text element. That also works. So you can see that when we create this text element, it doesn't appear in the card library, and we can delete it with backspace, and that will fully delete all these text elements. So that is like the basic of how you can create cards and you can create text elements on the whiteboard. And now I'm going to show you how you can use whiteboard to extract knowledge from sources. So here I have a card called Mindstorms Highlights. This is a card where Mindstorms is a book that I read in the past. And so in this card, I have a lot of notes that I created for the books. And I create these notes chapter by chapter. So you can see there's chapter introduction, chapter 1, 2, 3 to chapter 8. And one thing I think is very important for learning and sense making is that you are trying to break down the knowledge you learn from your reading or from your course into a lot of atomic pieces, and you are trying to connect this knowledge and to see the structure of it. And when your notes lives in the format like this, you can't see any structure, don't you? Right? Like all you see is a lot of toggle list and with a lot of, like quote and excerpt from the original book, but you can't see the structure this way. And that's why one thing that I love doing is to break down these large cards into smaller cards. And the common workflow that I use is I will open this card and add it to the right sidebar, and I will expand some of the toggle here and just look through my notes and see what are some of the atomic knowledge that I can extract from this card. For example, let's see here in this part, I think there's important ideas that I can extract, which is children's are the active builders of their own intellectual structures. I think this is a very important idea. So what I like to do is I just copy it and then I paste it here. I make it a title, and maybe children equals active builders of their own intellectual structures. This is an important ideas. So I create a card. So basically I now extract one important ideas from these original sources. When I click the link, it will zoom out and show you this card. And now when I scroll down, I can see that, okay, here the book talk a little bit about how learning to program is learning to become highly skilled at isolating correcting bugs. So I think this is also a very important concept. In fact, I think these two bullet points are both about that concept. So I can also drag it out and turn it into a card, and I can I think this sentence is particularly important, so I will copy it and paste it here, and that's command +/ This way you can also turn it into a heading. Learning to be a master programmer is learning to become highly skilled at isolating and correcting bugs. And this part is probably irrelevant, so I will just delete it. So this is what I commonly do when I'm extracting knowledge from sources. I just keep looking through different part of the sources, and sometimes I extract a new card, and sometimes I might just drag a paragraph and add it to an existing card. And so this way you have all these atomic concepts, and then you can gradually drag an arrows between them to see the connection. You can maybe add a color to mark the important card, or you can select this card and press Command G to create a section about learning and programming. And within this section, you can also change its color. So this process of breaking down knowledge will take quite some time. And in fact, I think this process is the essence of learning. The essence of learning is you have consumed all this information, but then you kind of restructure it in your own way to understand it in your own way, and then gradually figure out that structure. So I'm not going to extract in the entire book in this video, but I can show you the end product. Like this Mindstorm book, after spending 3-4 hours extracting the ideas and concepts and grouping them, I can see a very clear structure of all the knowledge in this book, and I can see some different theses and some different important ideas from the books and the examples from the book. And in that way, let's say 5 years later, I am designing this software for augmented learning. What I can do is I can just come back to this whiteboard, easily remember what I have learned very long times ago, and then pick the knowledge that I want to use to apply to in this new context. So what I have just shown you with these Mindstorms examples is how I extract knowledge cards from my book notes and then make sense of all these knowledge cards on the whiteboard. However, if you are a researcher who works with a lot of PDF files, a lot of time you might want to perform similar process on your PDF files. And the good news is you can actually do that in Heptabase. All you need to do is you can drag these PDF files onto the whiteboard to create PDF cards, and then you can open these PDF files, create highlights and annotation, and drag all these highlights and annotations onto the whiteboard. So let me show you a real world examples here. So I have a whiteboard here called Alan Kay, who is computer pioneers back in 1970s. Alan Kay has several famous writing, and I have found this writing that is stored in PDF format. So I drag, for example, this writing called Computers, Networks, and Educations, which I find very inspiring. So I add the PDF files onto this whiteboard. And what you can do with these PDF files is you can open it on the sidebar, and let's close the left sidebar so we can have more space. And then you can read the PDF files on the sidebar. You can zoom in and to see the text more clearly. And if you find the part that is specifically inspiring to you, you can just select the text and then create a highlight. And you can, once you create a highlight, you can drag the highlight out to the whiteboard. And for images like this, you can also use our area highlight tool to just drag a box here, and then you create an area highlight that you can drag onto the whiteboard. So that is how you can create highlights on PDF files. And with these highlights, you can also add some of your comments in the note section, or you can edit the text in this highlight to make it more to give it more structure. And these highlight that you created here, they all have this locate highlight button. If you click it, you will reposition the source of this highlight. Like this one, when I click it, it opens this page of the PDF files and focus on these images. So this process is very, very similar to the process of extracting book notes, but instead you are now extracting knowledge from PDF files and create all these highlight cards that you can make sense of them on the whiteboard. And even also that we right now haven't support video card and audio card yet, but we are going to support them soon. So in the end, like once we have all the feature rolls out, you will be able to create highlights and annotation on any type of sources that you can imagine and create cards out of it that you can make sense on the whiteboard. So now let's go back to our original whiteboards of designing a software for augmenting learning. Like we had to go through the process of extracting knowledge, and now we are going to talk about the process of synthesizing the knowledge you have for your new purpose like this. So let me just remove all these cards here since we are not going to use them. One thing that I commonly do when I'm researching a new topic is that I like to revisit some of my existing whiteboards and to see if there are any knowledge that could be useful in this new context. In this example of designing the software for augmenting learning, I find these three whiteboards, Mindstorms, Alan Kay, and Brett Victor, particularly relevant, and I have already marked some cards that I think could be useful in this new context. So let's start with the Mindstorm whiteboard. So you can see in this whiteboard, I have already marked these three cards yellow, which I think they could be very useful. So I can shift click to multi-select them, press Command C, and then come here and press Command V to paste them. And you can see that when I'm pasting, there's an option of sync pasted cards, which means when I do that, this card will be the same card that I copy from the Mindstorm. And you can see that, oh, they already appeared in 5 different whiteboards, like these different whiteboards. And since we don't need the arrows here, I will just select and delete them and then put them here. And now let's move to the Alan Kay whiteboard. And in this whiteboard, I find these 4 cards particularly relevant. So I will copy them as well and come back to this original whiteboard and paste them. And I think I want to change their color to blue so I can distinguish that these cards are from different sources. And in the Brett Victor whiteboards, I think there are quite some cards that I think are relevant. So I'm also going to just shift click and multi-select then this card, this one, and this one. And I think there are 2 cards here and here. So let's just copy them and then come back to this whiteboard and paste them. And you can see that since these cards are now scattered in different places, I want to just move them into one place. So I just select them, join the selection box, and choose the tidy up option and arrange them as a grid. And I also want to change the color of this card into green. So now we can distinguish like all these cards from 3 different sources. So once we finish this collection stage, now I think it's a time for us to synthesize them and to see like the structure, like my mental model of thinking about this problem of designing a software. I want to center everything with this idea, which I think this idea is a central idea. So here, one particularly useful feature that you can use is mind map. For every single card, you can right click to open the mind map toggle. So once you do that, it becomes a center of a mind map node. Or the other way, like if you just want to create a new mind map, you can right click and then create a new mind map. But here in this example, we are just going to use this card as a center of the mind map node. And once I have this mind map, let's see some of the ideas that I find have a stronger connection. So let's just coding is good for engineering, bad for authoring. I think this one is particularly relevant. I think representation should bring human capability into service. This is an important idea that I want to connect here. And then let's see, insights are born in transition between the ladder of abstraction. I think this is also very important ideas that I want to branch out from these center ideas. And we need to try out different ideas and verify hypotheses as fast as we think of them. I think this is an idea that can branch out from this ladder of abstraction. And I can see that we need to create, we need a way of creating representation by drawing and direct manipulation. I think this is an idea that we can branch from why coding is bad for authoring. And let's come here. Okay, the purpose of computing is insight, not numbers. I want to put this card here on the left-hand side. And then the right way to understand the system is not to talk about it, but to model it and explore it. So here, this card, I want to put it here. And let's see. Okay, the new kind of authoring literacy is children creating interactive tools. So this is definitely relevant to this idea of modeling a system instead of talking about it. Let's see. And okay, so to get the computer to generate poetry, this I think is also very relevant to the modeling here. And the turtle geometry, this is also one of the examples how you can understand the system better by modeling that system. And let's see, okay, the information software serve the human's urge to learn. I think this is relevant to the purpose of computing. And this one is talking about like why information software is context sensitive information graphic. And okay, so we have 3 cards left. Let's see. I think these 3 cards, this one from Alan Kay, I will put it here, and this one I will put it here, and this one I'll put it here. All right, so now we have synthesized a new structure of this topic using the knowledge card that we created from 3 different sources. And once I have this kind of mental model, it put me in a better position to think about this problem. For example, like within this card, I might have a new product idea that I will just call it product idea 1, and I can just directly branch out from this card. And for this card, I might have 2 product idea. Let's just call it product idea 2 and product idea 3. And I can maybe just type some son of my salt here. Okay. And so let's say like I want to develop product idea 3 and I want to turn it into the design of a minimal viable product. So I can press tab and then set design spec of the MVP. That's my minimal viable product. And I can turn it into a card. I can make this a title, and then I can start writing my spec. So now you can see like this is a magic here, right? Like I have learned a lot of knowledge from a lot of different sources, and now I'm working on a problem that I care about. I collect the cards that I think are useful to this whiteboard. I connect them using the mind map structure, and then now I can branch out this product idea and even design specs out of this mind map. And the beautiful thing is that, okay, now like this design spec, I can maybe just drag it out here, and then and then just like, you know, have other new cards, other new ideas that I want to connect them, and then gradually build out this complete analysis of this new design. Maybe like I have a user interview. I would just say user interview with Ethan, my co-founder, and today, okay, and then I can type some interview notes here and connect that user interview note within this design spec, and then I can have some new design that branch out from this user interview, like the iteration 2, the iteration 3, the iteration 4. But you know my point. This is why like everything that we are doing here is the core value that we are trying to provide you through Heptabase. We want you to be able to extract knowledge card from many different type of sources that, like the first half of the video, like you create book notes, you create PDF, you have videos, you have audios, and you can extract this knowledge card out of it. You can make sense of them into a structure, into these whiteboards. And then when you revisit them, you can immediately remember how you think, even after a long time. And now you're working on a new problem. You can go revisit those whiteboards and pick the atomic knowledge cards that you find particularly useful, put them back to this new whiteboard, synthesize them, and then branch out, like brainstorm like your new things on top of the existing knowledge and existing ideas that you already have. And I think this is basically what, like how people, how knowledge worker do all types of knowledge work. Like all this information we learn, we try to reapply them in new way, in new context. But now you have a tool that preserve all this context and preserve all this understanding that you have perfectly. And all the knowledge you have in Heptabase will be reusable in the future, like when you are solving new problem or when you are researching a new topics. And the more notes that you have in Heptabase, the more power you can have, because they all become a repository of knowledge that you can apply anytime. So that's it. That's the first video. I hope you find this video helpful, and I hope that after this video, you will have a better sense of how you can use Heptabase to learn and to research complex topics. In the next video, we are going to zoom out a little bit and talk about how you can organize your whiteboards, how you can organize your cards, and also how you can organize your tabs. And I hope I can see you in the next video. Thank you.